All right, let's dive into one of America's most baffling and truly terrifying cold cases. For more than 30 years, a killer who haunted the main artery of the Midwest has been little more than a ghost, leaving behind a legacy of pure terror and so many unanswered questions. So, picture this. It's the spring of 1992. You've got these small towns and cities dotted all along Interstate 70. You know, that huge highway that cuts right through the middle of the country? Life feels normal, quiet, but nobody knows that a phantom is moving among them, and a storm is about to break.
Think about that for a second. In less than a single month, one killer is going to take 6 lives across 3 different states. These numbers are just staggering. They show you the terrifying speed and the cold, brutal efficiency of a killer who seemed to just materialize out of thin air and then vanish. So let's really break down this timeline, because it's key to understanding just how this wave of violence absolutely paralyzed the region. At first, none of these crimes seemed to be connected at all. They just felt like horrible, random tragedies.
Okay, just look at how this unfolds. It all starts on April 8th in Indianapolis. Robin Fuldauer is the first victim. Just 3 days later, the killer is somehow 700 miles away in Wichita, Kansas, where he murders 2 women. Then he doubles back to Indiana. After that, he strikes twice in Missouri. The pace is absolutely frantic, the geography is huge, and for weeks, nobody had a clue it was the same person.
So how in the world did police go from investigating 6 separate tragic murders to hunting for a single, terrifying serial killer? Well, the big breakthrough actually came from one really sharp detective in St. Charles, Missouri. He was working his case and started noticing some eerie similarities to other murders he was hearing about along I-70. Now, to understand how they finally linked these crimes, we need to talk about something called an MO, or modus operandi. Basically, it's the killer's signature. It's their method, their routine, the consistent habits that create a pattern. And in this case, oh man, the pattern was chillingly specific. When you lay it all out like this, it is just bone-chilling. The victims all fit a type: petite women, long dark hair, working all by themselves in these little specialty shops. And every single store was in a strip mall, just a short drive off I-70. Every victim was shot in the back of the head with the same type of gun. And get this, the robberies were almost an afterthought. A few bucks were taken from the register, but that's it. This was never about money, and it wasn't a sexual crime. It was about something else entirely.
Okay, but you're probably wondering, what about Michael McCaughan? He was the one male victim. Well, investigators have a pretty compelling theory about that. He was working in his mom's ceramics shop, he had long hair, and he was shot from behind while he was kneeling down to stock shelves. Police are pretty sure the killer simply mistook him for a woman.
So, once police knew for sure they were hunting a single person, the race was on to figure out, who is this guy? What does he look like? And their best clues came from 2 incredibly brave and, frankly, very lucky eyewitnesses. I mean, can you even imagine this? This is the moment a customer in Wichita walked into that bridal shop right after the 2 women inside had been murdered. He came face to face with the killer, who pointed a gun at him and told him to go to the back room. The customer just said no and ran for his life. He was seconds away from being the next victim, and his description gave police their first real look at this phantom.
So, when they combined his account with others, a pretty clear picture started to form. A white male, kind of slender, not too tall, maybe 5'7" to 5'9". His hair was described as sandy blonde or reddish. But the 2 things witnesses really seemed to remember were his lazy, heavy eyelids and a high forehead.
And this is the face that has haunted this case for decades. On the left, you've got the original composite sketch from 1992, based on those eyewitness accounts. And on the right, this is an age-progressed sketch that police released in 2021. The hope is that even after all this time, someone out there might recognize the man he grew up to be.
But then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he was gone. After that bloody spring of '92, the I-70 killings just stopped. The trail went completely cold. And that led investigators to wonder, did he really stop? Or did he just move to a new hunting ground?
And this is where the story gets even stranger. A year later, down in Texas, a new series of murders begins that is almost a carbon copy of the I-70 spree. Look at this. Same victim type, same MO, same locations near a major interstate. But there's one huge difference. Ballistics tests confirmed it was a different .22 caliber handgun. So what does that mean? Same guy with a new gun? or a terrifying copycat? It's a question that divides investigators to this day.
And then there's this. Fast forward to 2001, and we're back in Terre Haute, Indiana, just 7 blocks from where Michael McCowan was killed. A liquor store clerk is murdered in a nearly identical way. But here's the absolute game changer with this one. It's the only potential crime where the killer was actually caught on a security camera.
So, here we are, more than 30 years later. And where does all of this leave us? Well, investigators are sitting on this frustrating collection of clues and some really compelling theories, but they still don't have a name to go with that face.
The clues they do have are fascinating. They're pretty sure the gun was a rare German-made pistol. Then there's this detail, which is one of the weirdest parts of the whole case. The bullet casings had traces of jeweler's rouge on them. That's a polishing compound. So, was he a jeweler, or just a guy who was so obsessed with his weapon that he meticulously polished his own bullets? It feels like a huge clue, but nobody's been able to crack it. FBI profilers think this killer isn't driven by the usual motives. They believe he's living out some kind of power fantasy, and that he has a really deep emotional connection to his gun. And even with all our modern science, things like touch DNA have so far led to nothing but dead ends.
You know, despite all the time that's passed, the police and especially the victims' families have never, ever given up hope. They are convinced that the killer probably told someone, or that someone out there knows some small detail that could blow this whole case wide open. And that's why this tip line is still active today.
And so that's the final haunting question that hangs over everything. Is he still out there, living a quiet life somewhere? Did he die and take his secrets to the grave? Or could one single phone call, even after all this time, finally give a name to the phantom who terrorized America's heartland?